and I have spent over 30 years in radio and television. And in my latest adventure, I'm speaking, I'm consulting, and sharing what I've learned along the way about success and life. I believe that the source of our biggest successes comes from the value that we bring to others when we are able to express who we really are, our truest, most authentic selves. It is something I call fearless authenticity. I started this podcast to have conversations with people from all walks of life about what fearless authenticity looks like and feels like and the success that it brings. It's about what happens when we find and follow our passions and how the highest expressions of who we truly are actually serves others the best. Now, we're going to talk about it all in this podcast. I wanted to get real, honest, and open about the ups and downs, the distractions, the doubts, the goals and the dreams, the failures and the triumphs, and every single thing in between. And I hope it gets deep because that's where we find all the best stuff. But it's also about the fun of life and about how we find ways to move forward, push through, and make our dreams come true. And also engage with the world in the way that we were created to do so. And don't get it twisted. It's also about the fun in everything because, as I like to say, if it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. So if you are ready to live your most fearless, big, be brave, be free, be you life, let's learn how to do it together. Welcome to Fearless Authenticity with me, Jeanne Sparrow. Now, my guest today is a multi-hyphenate broadcaster and performer. She was an essential voice on Chicago radio beginning back in 1985 when she began working with radio legend Tom Joyner on WGCI. She later joined another legend, Doug Banks, on the Banks & Company morning show, and she is a consummate professional, whether she's a co-host or host, an entertainment reporter, film or theater critic, or travel and entertainment writer and actress. She currently hosts Bonnie's Eye, a 1-hour show on the Omni Channel, and she's a contributing journalist for ChicagoNow.com and the Gary Crusader. It is my honor, it is my pleasure, and it is the best thing in the world to welcome my friend, my colleague, my mentor, my soror, the originator of Hey Baby, the one and only Bonnie DeShong. Hey girl.
Hey baby.
And look what I wore for you. Look what I wore for you today.
I started to put on my sweater, and I said, "No, I'm gonna play it cool." But I started to represent.
Baby, listen. I was going through my closet today, and I was like, "Wait a minute, I got some new Perry. Let me put it on for my girl. Because you represented back. I remember listening to you when I first moved to Chicago. When you were working with Doug, when I was going to school at Northwestern. And I remember always being so proud because you always represented everything. You represented being from Champaign. You represented being a Delta. You always shouted out your school. You always shouted out all the things that meant to you, meant something to you. And I just want to thank you for that because it was one of the first peeks into how to do this and how to move as yourself and all those things.
Oh, thank you, Jeanne. I mean, it's funny because everybody that I worked with wanted to do radio. I mean, that was their life. That was their breath. Doug, Tom, went to school for radio. I went to school for theater. And I just got into radio on I don't want to say whim, but I want to say, it was luck. It was a God blessing. It was sent there. So I didn't have the same type of framework or thought.
But you know what? I think it helped you to do things that other people might not have done, because especially back in those days, like the 70s and the 80s especially, we were still, I think, in this place where we had to do certain things that were prescribed, right? You got to come across this way, you got to do this. And I think it's hard to shift out of that. And I think that the talent of people like Doug and Tom, and then having the spontaneity of going, you know what, I don't have to do it the way that people say I have to. And I think that that's some of what you brought to the table as well, that kind of like, let's shake it up. Let's be let's be ourselves. Were you even aware of how great the people that you were working with were at that time?
I was in awe. I was so green coming into this. Everybody I just thought was just huge, because I listened to Tom when he was on JPC and everything. So yeah, I was a little out of my element, but then I figured, hey, it's a job. I'll go in, I'll do what I'm supposed to do, and hopefully they'll like me. And then I got into it, and we were more like a family opposed to, well, instead of being here and here, we were a family.
Yeah. And you know what? And I had the same feeling when I came in. I remember listening to you guys when I was in college. And then when I first started working, I was like, are they going to talk to me? I was like, hi, how y'all doing? I was like, I really want to be friends with Bonnie. I was like, you think she'll talk to me? Like, literally, I was like, I'm not going to bother them today. And it's weird how that happens. And then all of a sudden something shifts and you're like, oh, I'm actually contributing something. All of the things that you have done, what's the thread that connects them all for you? And when and how did you decide that was the thing for you, especially since some of these things were just, God and luck and blessings? How do you see how that thread goes through everything you've done?
Okay. Mom and them. Okay. When I went to college, first I started off at Eureka College, and I was going to go into elementary ed, decided I did not want to do that. Got over to Illinois State University, where I graduated from, and I got into the theater department, and I wanted to do theater. Well, Mom and them said, that theater stuff is okay, but you got to have something to fall back on. So you got to get a teaching degree. So I begrudgingly got a teaching degree. The teaching degree, I got a call. I didn't do teaching. I started working in a bank, but I got a call from one of my teachers, and she said, come to Chicago. I want you to teach a 6-week theater course. So it's like, okay. So I came to Chicago. I taught a 6-week theater course at McKinley School in, Dixmoor. Decided I wanted to stay. Got involved with the Chicago Theater Company. And so then worked at Columbia College, got cast in a play, met Richard Pegee. Richard Pegee said, hey, look, we're starting a traffic division at WGCI. You want to do it? And I said, I don't know how to do traffic. He said, I'll teach you. I said, okay. I ended up at the top of the Sears Tower in a closet, learning from Brenda Montgomery how to do traffic. And then Harold Lee Rush, when they were with Banks and Company, said, let's bring her out of the tower and bring her into the studio. And I came into the studio as a full company member, and off it went.
Wow. Well, okay. So how much did Mama Nim take credit for all of that, for that circuitous route? Because that's something, Bonnie. That is something.
It took Mama Nim a long time to get used to this whole radio thing. It's like, well, what's this radio stuff? And what do you do? What? Huh? You need to have a good job.
Like, it is a good job. It's a really good job. I don't know that it's any more stable than the theater stuff, but it definitely pays better.
It paid better. It took Mama to come up here to visit. And we were going grocery shopping, and somebody said, oh, that's Bonnie DeShong. She's on the radio. And Mama said, they talking about you? I said, yeah, Mom. And she said, okay. Then she went through the whole grocery store. This is my daughter. This Bonnie DeShong. She on the radio.
I love it. But look at how much you've done with it, though. I mean, you even since then, I mean, you never left the stage. I remember you doing plays and things. I mean, the Goodman, ETA, all these institutions of arts, the theater arts in Chicago. You've been on those stages, so you didn't actually give up that dream. It just looked a little bit different, right?
Yeah. That's exactly it, Jeanne. It's like I always felt that I had to, whatever I wanted to do, I needed to do to fulfill how I felt. Okay. And that even came down to being with the listeners that we would greet, and being on stage or being out in the public eye, and someone coming up to you, is how you feel about yourself. It comes out to the people who you are greeting. You know what I'm saying?
Girl,
You know
you're gonna
what
make
I'm
me
saying?
fight. You're gonna make me fight. Because that's so, oh, that's so true. And I talk about that so much. And I think that that's, because we share some acting background with that. And it's so true. It's like you affect how people feel. You can change the temperature in a room by how you enter it. And I tell that to my clients all the time. And it's amazing how we learn that with work.
Mm-hmm. And it's the truth. Now, the one thing that really resonated with me was when Marv Dyson said, and he won't remember this, I'm sure, he said that at the time it was Gannett. Gannett may sign your paycheck, but your boss is your listener. If they turn the radio off, you ain't got no job. Okay. So you have to relate, and you can't think that because I'm on the radio, I'm all this in a bag of chips. You got to realize that when you go to the bathroom, you're going next to somebody who's not on the radio. You know what I'm saying? It's like when days get hard, it doesn't matter that you're on the radio or not. If you're hungry, it don't matter. You have to treat people the way you want to be treated. And when that happens, it comes out and they give it right back to you,
I just want that to sit there for a second, because those are the biggest facts in the world. And it's actually something that you taught me when I was new to the business, because that's one of the hardest things to get used to. Because, when you start, you're young, you don't have no kind of sense, but you think you know everything. And I remember one of the things I struggled with was feeling like there was this expectation that who I was on the air had to be who I was out and about all the time. You at the Jewels, and you on a Saturday morning, and your hair's all over your head, and you like, you know what, this is just not the good day. And somebody coming up to you like, Sparrow, you look crazy. And I remember you telling me way back then, you're like, every day ain't gonna be your best day, but show up at least the way you can for other people. And I remember it took me a while to learn how to do that and be like, you know what, boo, I'm not having a good day, but thank you for listening. I sure appreciate it. I'll talk. Can we talk another time? Because mama's hungover today, or whatever it was. Right. And you and Doug, especially, because y'all were always so good with people at our live broadcasts and things like that. And everybody in radio is not like that.
No, and that disheartens me, because people, I don't care where they're from. I don't care their social. I have hugged, girl, when I was out in the van, I would get homeless people coming up to me who knew who I was. Hey, you Bonnie DeShong, here you go. I'm going to give you a hug. And it's like, you can't go, you give them a hug. You go to the nearest McDonald's and wash your hands, but you give them a hug, because that hug may take them through that day, or just holding their hands, or just saying hello. Think of how you are on your worst day, and how if somebody comes up to you and just gives you a great smile and go, hey, how you doing today? You can't help but just go. So if you can give that back to somebody and make their day, it only makes your day brighter.
Right. And you know what? What I used to love is how people used to people would be screaming at you. I remember it must have been Bud Billiken or something like that, where all of us are together, and literally as we're going down King Drive, it's like, hey baby. Where did Hey Baby come from?
Well, I'm going to tell you, way back, probably before you moved here, the Wiz was here. And the girl that played Dorothy, her name was Renee. And she would go, hey, baby, hey, baby, hey, baby, this. So we started, hey, hey baby, hanging out. So one day I'm up in the Sears Tower, and people don't know, Tom and I were never together. He was over on Michigan Avenue in the studio. I was on the 103rd floor of the Sears Tower in a closet, technically, really. And one day I wasn't paying attention. I was paying attention, but I wasn't paying attention. And he said, Bonnie. And I went, hey, baby. And then after we got off the air, he said, keep it. And I said, okay, keep what? And he said, the hey, baby. And I said, oh, okay, because that's the way friends, we would greet ourselves. Hey, baby. So that's how it stayed.
That is something. And that working in the closet, I feel you, because mine was over at the Hancock, which I should have never corrected Doug, because for the longest time, they would always say, we're at the Sears Tower. I was like, I'm not actually at the Sears Tower. Like, Shadow is over at the Hancock. And then Doug started being like, oh, you at the top of the cock? Ah! Like, really? Did I just do that to myself?
Yeah, you did.
I did.
You did.
I did. What's the best? You've already talked about a couple of things that other people have said to you, legends in this business, Marv Dyson and Tom Joyner. What is the best piece of advice you have ever gotten or given, whether it's in the business or outside of it? What's the best piece of advice you'd like to share?
Merry Dee told me, you are worth it. And the reason why she said it was, I was one of those that people would call up and say, Bonnie, we're doing this this thing and we want you to host it. And but we don't have any money. It's a nonprofit, so, we don't have any money. So one day Merry Dee came up to me and she brought me a flyer that had my face on it and my name on it and everything. And she said, how much you getting paid for this? I said, oh, it's a nonprofit. I'm just doing it. She said, the person that printed it got paid. The person that's going to be in the band gets paid. The venue is getting paid. The tickets are being sold because Bonnie DeShong is hosting it. Don't you think you're worth it? I said, boing, boing, boing,
baby.
Boing. Yeah.
Ooh, don't you think you're worth it? And let me tell you something. And Mary gave you that look like she always does.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just lets stuff sit, like, and then smiles real big.
And then that smile. Yes, like, you got it. Yes. And it was like, I got it. I got it.
And we all fell for that. Did we all fall for that? Okie doke. And the thing is, it's like, there's nothing wrong with giving somebody a break or helping somebody out. But I think, but it's that last part about, don't you think you're worth it? Mm-hmm. What is the value that you're bringing, and knowing, because I don't think I knew for a very long time the value that I brought to any situation. It was, you always feel like somebody doing you a favor.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you all, especially being a co-host, okay? And there's a difference between being a co-host and being a sidekick, okay? And some people can't work with the co-host because that means that you are involved. You're the whole family. You're working side by side with this person. Your point of view matters. Where a sidekick, you just laugh and just uplift the host. But being a co-host, I felt that my job was to make sure that Doug and Tom and John and Tony, those are all the guys that I worked with, looked great. And I was there as their backup, rah, 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 good, good, good. I was blessed that they understood my talents. They recognized it more than I did and pulled me to the forefront and allowed me to be me and allowed my name to be out there and allowed me to be a little independent and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's something when you get in there and you try to figure out, where do I fit? Where's, of course, the station and stuff thinks that the guy is the guy that's doing it, but you have to have your lane too.
Talk to me about being a woman in this business. Because, even when I started in the early 90s, because I started in the late 80s, like, suburban radio and at home in Louisiana, but it was the early 90s when I started, and it was still very much a boys club. I think it still is. I'm not uncomfortable with it, and I haven't had a bad experience, but we've seen the headlines that have happened over the last year about some of the horrible behavior that that people have gotten away with up until recently, and who knows what happens in the future. Talk to me about having your power as a woman in a room full of men, in a business full of men, in an industry that is not only run by them, but often the tastemakers who make the decisions about what women hear are never the women. Rarely. The only woman I can remember who was a woman of power as far as programming went back then was Barbara Prieto.
Oh, yeah.
She's the only one I remember early in my career. There have been more since then, but I don't know that I've ever worked for a woman program director in radio. Not full time. Music directors, assistant PDs, but I don't know that I've ever worked for full time for a female program director. But
you're right. I don't think I have either.
So what was it like for you,
until now?
Right.
Until now, First Lady.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and First Lady and I came up together in the business. So that's wild. But talk to me about keeping your power as a woman under those circumstances.
It's funny because I don't know what it's like in white radio, to be totally blunt. Being at a urban Black radio station, it was different. It was different. Mainly because culturally, for one thing, we're huggers. We will see somebody, we'll give them a hug, we'll give them a kiss on the jaw, off we go. I mean, that is just a cultural thing for us. So at the time, doing that was something that was normal. However, there were some that tried to make that hand go down a little bit lower. I had a station manager put his hand on my butt at an appearance, and I turned around and cussed him from high to heaven. My problem is, not my problem. The thing is, when I was coming up, there was a line. However, the women that I worked with didn't take any mess. So it was a little bit different from us. Yeah, Marv and all of them and it was the guys' club. The guys made more money. The guys got more things going. They got all of the great stuff, and we were there supporting them. But when you have Yvonne Daniels and you have Irene Mojica and you have Wanda Wells and you have all of these other strong Black women that will look at you like you out the box, that gives us the strength. That gave me the strength to be the person that I know that I could be, and I could stop if something happened out the box. But it happened, and it happened often to some other people.
Wow. And what's interesting is that I can't remember a time when any of that happened to me, but I always felt protected by you all. Like, I always felt like my big sisters at the station always had me, not just on air staff, but also, in the sales department, Lana Thompson, Elena Singleton, everybody who we worked with there always had our back. Angela.
Miss Brazelton, honey. Velma Brazelton.
Miss B? Oh, Miss B. Miss B. You call Miss B's off and be like, Miss B. It was like telling on somebody, Miss B. Mm-hmm. That's what you need to know. But you know what? The thing for me, I think, because it was less about people crossing a line and more about being heard, and saying, hey, listen, I can do more than just traffic. I want to contribute more, or and depending on where you are in your development, like that was one of the things that I thought Doug was particularly good at, is encouraging us to have our own voice, because he wasn't threatened by anybody shining in their lane because he was so good with where he was. And I worked with him later in his career, so I don't know how he got to that point. Maybe y'all trained him up that way.
I think we had to train him. Shirley Clark Strawberry.
Yes.
You know, and one of the things with Doug was open. He allowed us to have our lane. However, I'm going to tell a story. Nobody, you know, only the ladies involved would know this. And Doug, forgive me. When Doug went out, you know, Doug had issues with diabetes. Because I'm going to tell you guys, when we had breakfast in the morning, we could have fed a whole, you know, Jeanne, we could have fed the whole studio, the whole company for what we had in that studio.
From that little spot downstairs.
Yes. Ooh, the little greasy spoon downstairs.
Baby, let me tell you something. Them hash browns alone. Okay.
And Doug would have a whole gallon of milk.
Yep, I remember.
Okay, that. You know that. And he was much, much bigger than some people may remember him as. And he had a diabetic episode, so he was off the air. So there was the brilliant idea to do Babes in Company.
I remember that because it was you, AJ,
and Sybil.
Yep.
It was me, AJ, and Sybil.
I love Babes in Company.
Honey, AJ drove it, which means she was like the host, you know, and Sybil and I were, you know, did our thing, the co-host thing, and took little pictures. We looked real cute and everything. Doug came back and said, never will they step in for me again. We were getting it was really popular. And it was like, no Babes in Company. We never were able to sit in for Doug again. So it's little things like that.
Wow.
I know.
Well, you know what? Well, here's the thing. You grow and you learn and you change, and you don't hold stuff against people for where they've been before. But I will say that by the time I came around, there were a lot of conversations that I had with Doug that really helped me to move forward and be my own host and do my own thing. So maybe, I don't know, maybe things changed for him and maybe that was a bad moment. But you know what? Here's the thing. Like, you know what? That should even happen with Steve. Not the same way. But I remember when Steve went to do his TV show, that first show he got, the Steve Harvey show, I believe it was on the WB, I can't remember. But anyway, where he was playing the teacher and that whole thing with Cedric and all of them. When he went to LA to do that, he would call in on an ISDN line. And there would be some days if he was shooting, like he was too tired to do the show, or he would wake up late or something like that. And I ended up sitting in the driver's seat because it was so last minute, couldn't call nobody, right?
Right.
And I remember one time Bernie Mac came in, because you know at that point it was comedians all over the joint, right? And I remember Bernie came in one time and he said, you know what? I'm just sitting here. This your show. He was like, and because he was like, where's Steve usually be? And I was like, he usually stands right there. He was like, shit. You gonna stand right there. He said, because I don't want to do this radio shit. I just want to come and have a good time. He was like, you ain't scared, are you? And I was like, no. But I remember it being a thing for Elroy and all of them, at least initially. Can she carry a morning show? Can she do it? Like, is it a question that and I never knew, and I never asked him because I didn't even think about it, to be 100% honest. I never even thought to ask them if they thought I couldn't carry it because I wasn't ready yet, or if they thought I couldn't carry it because I was a woman. And I remember Curl Man was like, this your shit now, girl, you better do it. He was like, we ain't got no choices. You all we got. So you better pull it together. And you know, it's funny how those two situations are probably 10, 15 years apart. That's not that much time. But it didn't change that much.
No, it didn't, because the thing is, a lot of time it's a little bit of both. You know, it's always out there. A woman cannot drive morning or afternoon drive. You can't be the lead. You can't sit in the driver's seat for morning. Now, middays, overnights, quiet storm, you know, yes. But morning and afternoon, when Tony Richards left, I had the afternoon, I drove the afternoon drive for, wow, several months. And before they brought in Ramon, they didn't even consider, our ratings were up, but they never considered me to drive the after. But, you know, it was fine. I said, okay, whoever you bring in, I'll be here, but they got to remember they're coming into our show. We're not coming into theirs. They're coming into our show. Well, it turned out it didn't work. So soon I was let go. George was let go, and Ramon carried the show. So, wow. But you know, that's the way it goes.
Isn't it something? And you know, you hope. And I remember talking to Melissa Foreman about this.
Yeah.
Because she, you know, was one of the few women that drove her own morning show. Mm-hmm. Like Yvonne Daniels did it at NUA, but I think that was because of the format that it was and who Yvonne was, because she was also on, what was it, DAS? What was the station that was all women? Because that was,
I think it was DAS. I think it was DAS.
But
I can't think of it.
Because it was Yvonne, I want to say Denai Alexander was on that station.
Merry Dee.
Merry Dee was on it too.
And was Wanda Wells on that station?
I think she was. I think she was like the news director, but it was a station that had all women. And it was an exception for radio at the time. And I don't know how long it lasted, but I remember like Yvonne was the only person I knew as a woman who had a morning drive show or an afternoon drive show on, you know, a major station, and people would still kind of discount it because of the format and saying that a woman's voice was more appropriate for that or that sort of thing. And I was just kind of like, that's all we get? Like, especially, and Melissa and I used to talk about this all the time, because it was like, we're talking to women. Women are our main group. Like, why is nobody listening to us about what women want to hear? As if you know more than I do, like literally. And we work for some great programmers who did get it and who did understand, but it's kind of like, you know, you got to fight for people to listen to you. So what's the end game out of that for you? Like, you rolled with all those punches. What was the lesson in that for you? And what was the way that you inserted your power into that situation and still were able to bring your gifts to the table and remain successful in working?
My thing was, I spoke up. You know, I became union steward at V103 and learned to fight that fight and brought it on over when we joined together with GCI and stuff. But I would speak my mind. And I think it was because I loved my job. I loved my job, but I loved the people I worked with more. You know, when I was fired, I did not resign. I was fired from V103. You know, I remember Elroy sitting in Elroy's office and him saying, I know you're really mad at me. And I told him, no, I had 20 years of a wonderful experience working with wonderful people. And to this day, you know, V103, GCI, my heart. I love everybody I worked with. I loved the whole 9 yards. I loved the experience, you know. And Richard P. McGee always said, you know, you're not in radio unless you've been fired. Well,
baby, listen. Look, I got fired from my first gig. So, you know, like I got fired. I remember when I met Peggy. I remember Richard Peggy was like, he said that. And I was like, oh, yeah, I got fired from my first gig. He said, well, you popped your cherry early. That's good. You got it over with. And I just remember going, Facts, fam. Facts.
Right.
And but I love that, the love that's there and what you focused on. Because same for me, like I think like we are so blessed to have been, especially be in Chicago on the radio. And I mean, because like literally, especially GCI in those days, like GCI was the king of the country when it came to Black radio, urban radio, and
in all aspects, because Banks and Company, everybody, was the first company of radio. We would get phone calls from Mason in Detroit and from other places, Russ, Parr, all of them saying, okay, we like this thing. We listen to you every day. We're going to take what you do and we're going to do it over here. Marv and all of the others, Sonny Taylor, James Alexander, Elroy, all of these program directors saw something. We used to break records. You know, a record would come in and a jock could say, you know, this is a good record. And the PD would say, okay, play it. And we break records. Chicago had its own sound back then. We were, I'm so glad I came up during that time. I am, right. Jeanne, I am.
Bonnie, you are part of history. I mean, you're a part of an important part of our history in that. And the thing that I love about this, that all of the things we're talking about, the challenges that we've been through, is that the love is still there. Like we're not upset with people about the mistakes that they made, because we made mistakes too. But in the end, it always served. It goes back to what you said about Marv, about who's actually signing the checks. And I would imagine that success and that approach has served you well in everything else you've done. You know, you worked for Fox when it first came on as a film critic and theater critic too, and entertainment reporting. You've written, you do travel writing, you've worked for the DuSable Museum, all those things. How has what you've learned from those essential core lessons that you learned from being part of that radio dynasty, how has that served you in the other work that you've done?
Oh, man. It let me see that, number one, the world is huge and I am just as huge as the world, you know, in here. Learning how to work with people, how to handle situations. It's amazing. Barry Mayo, looking at these people, it's helped me expand. When I was let go, when my journey ended at V103, and right away I got a phone call from SRB, and John and I went over there for a few months, and Richard Daly asked me to come on board to host Chicago Works, which was his TV show. Everything you do, you go to a certain point and it's time to learn something else. So you may not want to let go to get that other part of the education, but the universe will say, okay, it's time for you to let that go so you can move forward. And we're never too old to learn. Look at you, Jeanne. Look at you. I remember when you first came on the air, and you have had your own radio shows, your TV shows, your writing, I'm trying to figure out how to do all of this that you're doing now.
I'll help you, girl, because I want to hear more of this from you. There is so many stories that people don't know. There's so many stories that people have never asked us about. Like I feel like sometimes as Black women, we just people forget how much we struggle. I mean, Melissa used to say to me, and it's interesting coming from her, but it's true. And I think it's even doubly true for Black women. It's like, well, you got to be careful when you make something look easy, because then people think it really is easy to do.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so, and with that, it's like the pay doesn't come off. You don't get it's like, oh, well, she knows, that it's just this, it's that. Women multitask. We can do these things. We come up with ideas on the fly. We can rock a baby, have a guy feel like he feels like 150 degrees up. I mean, we can do it all, but because of that, we're negated. And in this business, yeah, you don't get the ear. I can say Max Myrick was program director when I was at V103. Max's ear was always open, and he always promoted the women that was there. Jamila Muhammad, he brought her up he trained her from a music director to a PD.
Jam. Oh man, I miss Jam.
I miss Jam too. I mean, but he had the foresight and the confidence in himself and in us to push us forward.
Yeah, I had that relationship with Elroy.
Yes.
And it's interesting how different ones of us connect with others in different ways. And, because I'm sure that there are as many women that champion one guy and say, okay, they're for us, that, and as they go through their growth and their changes and stuff. And wow, girl, we could talk about this.
We could forever. But I want ever. But I want to say, my soror, my friend, my sister, watching your journey, and our journeys go up, they go down, they stay the same, then they go up again. But watching your journey, watching your learning curve, watching you step into the woman that you are right now, this minute, not talking about radio, not talking about podcast, but the person you are right now. I am so proud of you. I uplift you. I will always be here for you, as I know you'll be here for me. I love you.
Damn it, Bonnie. Damn it. You see, you know what? And here's the thing. Don't let anybody ever fool you, but this is what chapter meetings are like for Deltas.
Yeah.
We do 3 things. We do 3 things. We get shit done, we eat, and we cry.
Yes, we do.
That's what we do, because we feel it deep. I got one last question for you, my love. Thank you for all of your support over the years. Thank you for saying those beautiful words. They mean so very much to me, especially coming from you, because you were there at the very beginning when I was as green as they come. So that, girl, what you just said is completely messing me up. In the best way. But I always like to end with one question that I ask everyone. Please share with us when you feel like, what is it that you're doing? What is it that you're saying? How is it that you're living? What is it when you feel like you are at your best, truest, most authentic self?
When I have helped someone, that's when I feel like I've done that. I just feel like I'm carrying on. I feel great when I can see a smile on someone's face, or I know that I have directed someone in the right direction. And that includes me. Sometimes I need to sit back and say, okay, sister girl, I'm getting ready to tell all y'all a secret here. Bonnie isn't the real name. Most of us don't use our real name. So I'll say, okay, Willie Artilia DeShong, where you going, what you doing, and how are you going to make it better? So it's helping. I've always wanted to help somebody. I'm a nurturer.
Sis, I love you so much.
Love you too.
This has been the most emotional podcast to date. I should have known it would be you. Um, but I love you so much. We're going to do a part two because I think that there are more things. Maybe we should have a Radio Ladies
Oh,
podcast. Like that
that
came to me, like all of us, AJ, Irene,
girl,
Sybil,
you gonna need four, because once you get AJ going, and if you get LaDonna on there, the rest of
Tittle
us we're
in
gonna
the
have to sit
middle,
Taylor in the
baby.
middle. We're gonna have to just sit back and go, okay.
Right? Well,
Because they
Tittle
got the
gonna come
real
on
stories.
because Tittle gonna come up. Well, listen, let me
Right.
tell you, girl, what you need to do is listen.
When I
Tittle,
was like,
when I was doing it, let me tell you what. I remember the best piece of advice. And I'm gonna share this with you, and then we gonna shut it down. Tittle
okay.
said to me, "Girl, you better have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D because you can't count on these motherfuckers,
That is so it.
baby,
Oh, that's the
baby."
best advice. That is the best advice right
Sis.
there.
And I listened. I think we all listened. She probably told that to all of us in one way, shape, form, or another. But damn if it didn't work out. Bonnie DeShong, you are a gift and a treasure. Thank you for being reflect and help herself. Okay, where are you going? What are you doing? And how are you going to make it better? All of these times we ask ourselves questions, we give ourselves the opportunity to get better and to make a change and see things in a way that we haven't done before. So thank you, Bonnie, for always doing that for me, for sharing and being my guest today. And thank you to my team, the Fearless Authenticity Production folks, for making this pod happen. Thanks to you, the listeners, my listeners, for your support. Please follow me at JM Sparrow on social. Like, rate, review, follow, subscribe on the iHeart app, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Also share with the community and check us out on YouTube if you want to see the video version. We want to hear your comments and questions and who you want me to talk to, and also about you and how you're doing on your journey to being your best, truest, most authentic self. I hope it brings you joy, and I hope that it brings you some lessons that you may need, because I know it's helping me. This has been Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow. We'll see you again soon.